She wore a ring I never gave her. I noticed it on a Tuesday morning, the kind of pale, unremarkable morning that promises little and delivers even less. The rain had come and gone before dawn, leaving everything damp and gray. I was lacing my shoes at the foot of the bed when I glanced up and saw it. A small gold band with a pale sapphire set in the center nestled quietly on her right hand. Right hand, not the one where our wedding band rested. Not the finger I'd slipped that simple diamond solitaire on 10 years ago. But still there it was. Foreign, delicate, and glaring in its wrongness. I tried not to stare. Tried to brush it off as something I hadn't noticed before. A family heirloom, maybe? Something from her mother, long kept in a drawer and only now brought out for sentimental reasons. But I knew her jewelry. Knew every piece. I was the one who'd held her hands through those long months when she lost her mother, through the funeral, through the unpacking of boxes where nothing like that ring had ever turned up. That ring didn't belong to her past. It didn't belong to me, either. Still, I said nothing. Not right away. Instead, I kissed her forehead before she left for work and sat there long after she walked out the door, shoelaces still untied, heart thudding a strange rhythm against my ribs. My mind turned it over like a puzzle piece jammed in the wrong corner of a 1,000-piece landscape. The band was thin, worn, and fit her finger perfectly. That told me it hadn't been borrowed for a day or slipped on as a casual accessory. No, she wore it like it meant something. By the time I arrived at the office, my mind was a hurricane of half-formed thoughts. I was useless in meetings. Emails blurred. My assistant asked if I was feeling all right, and I gave her a half-smile and said, just tired. I wasn't tired. I was unraveling. That night, as we ate dinner in front of the TV, leftover chicken, soggy vegetables, the kids already asleep, I finally asked. That ring, I said, not looking at her. Where's it from? Her response was instant, automatic. Too fast. Oh, you gave it to me. I blinked. I did. She laughed. Yeah, years ago. Don't you remember? For our 5th anniversary. 5th anniversary. We'd gone to Asheville that year. Stayed in a little mountain cabin with a wood-burning stove and a view of a winding river. I gave her a scarf. I remember because she wore it for months afterward, even when it was too warm for scarves. It was pale green and soft, the kind you buy at boutiques that smell like cedar and vanilla. I didn't give her a ring, but I didn't call her on it. Not right away. I just nodded, and she smiled, the lie stretching tight across her face like plastic wrap. Later that night, after she'd gone to sleep, I searched through our bedroom drawers. Her jewelry box. My nightstand. The receipts I kept from past birthdays and anniversaries. There was no record of that ring. I wasn't imagining things. She lied to my face. That should have been enough to confront her. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because something about the way she said it, so rehearsed, so ready, told me this wasn't new. This had been going on. Wednesday morning came and went in a fog. I skipped breakfast. Left the house without speaking more than a few words. I needed space to think. Room to breathe. So I drove past my office, parked in a nearly empty mall parking lot, and sat in silence. I opened my phone. Searched for signs of infidelity, like some nervous teenager fumbling with a first crush. The lists were vague. Suspicious behavior. Hidden devices. Emotional distance. None of it applied to her. At least not obviously. Elena had always been a closed book. Not cold, just private. The kind of woman who listened more than she spoke. Who kept her journals locked in a small safe beneath the bed and never offered up more than she needed to. That was part of what drew me to her in the first place. She was mysterious. Grounded. Strong. I never thought I'd have to question her honesty. But now there was this ring. This ghost of a gift I never gave. I went home early that day, under the pretense of having a migraine. She wasn't home yet. She always stayed late on Wednesdays for meetings. I used the time to search again, this time more thoroughly. Not just her drawers, but her closet, her gym bag, her makeup pouch, her purse. And there, in the inner zip pocket of her work tote, I found the box. It was small and velvet-lined, clearly from a local jeweler. Inside, there was a receipt. Not from our anniversary. Not from any date I recognized. Just 2 months ago. Cash purchase. No name on the slip. But it wasn't mine. I placed it back exactly as I found it. Zipped the pocket, smoothed the fabric, and stepped back. When she returned home that evening, she kissed me lightly on the cheek, then disappeared upstairs to shower. I watched her go, watched the sway of her hips, The way she always tucked her hair behind one ear as she turned the corner. Beautiful. Distant. Wearing a stranger's ring. And then it hit me. If the ring wasn't from me, who was it from? The question sank its claws into my brain and refused to let go. That night, I barely slept. I lay beside her, listening to the sound of her breathing, wondering if she was dreaming of someone else. Of him. Whoever he was. My mind painted pictures I didn't want to see. The curve of his hand placing that ring on her finger. The way she must have smiled at him. Maybe the same way she used to smile at me. I imagined them in some dimly lit restaurant. Her laughter, his voice. I imagined everything. I imagined too much. Thursday morning, I made a choice. If she was going to lie to me, I was going to find out the truth myself. I installed a voice-activated recorder in her car. Slipped a location tracker into the lining of her purse. Bought a duplicate of the house keys she used and left the original behind, so she wouldn't notice the change. I told myself I was being paranoid, obsessive, but the ache in my gut told me otherwise. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew. Not anymore. By Friday, I was sifting through the audio files. Hours of nothing. The hum of traffic. A podcast. Her humming along to music. Then, just before 6 p.m., her voice, soft, playful. I missed you today. A man's voice responded, muffled but audible. You always say that. Because it's true. My hands clenched the edge of the desk. She never said that to me anymore. That night, I couldn't look at her. I barely made it through dinner. She asked if I was all right, and I mumbled something about a headache. You've had a lot of those lately, she said gently. Yeah, I replied, standing to take my plate to the sink. Must be something going around. She said nothing after that. Just watched me with those wide eyes, like she could tell something was shifting but wasn't sure what. Later, after she went to bed, I opened her laptop. I knew her password. She'd never changed it. Our son's birthday. I dug through her files, her browser history, her email. Most of it was clean. Too clean. Until I checked the hidden folder tucked away under innocuous file names. Travel plans. Hotel bookings. Emails to a Mark J. And photos. Photos of her smiling in ways she hadn't in years. Of the two of them, heads together, lit by candlelight. In one, he's holding her hand. She's wearing the ring. The ring I never gave her. I don't remember the sound I made when I saw the photos. Some kind of low, animal groan, I think. The kind of sound your throat makes when your mind is too numb to form words. My eyes were locked on the screen, but my vision blurred. The blood left my head and pooled somewhere down in my chest, thick and hot and useless. I closed the folder, then opened it again, hoping it had vanished like a bad dream. It hadn't. Elena's face filled the screen, head tilted just slightly, eyes soft. Her smile, not the half-hearted, polite one she gave me after long days, but something warmer, younger. She hadn't looked at me like that in years. I wondered when exactly she'd stopped. Then he appeared beside her. Mark J. That's how he was saved in her email. No last name. Just a tidy little initial, like he was trying not to leave fingerprints. But his face was there. Strong jawline. Graying at the temples. Button-down shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest casual confidence. Probably the kind of man who orders wine without asking the waiter's opinion. A photo showed them outside some vineyard. Another in a hotel room, half-dressed, her hair falling in waves across her shoulders. Her hand on his chest. The ring gleaming in the low light. That same pale sapphire. A ring that never belonged to me. I shut the laptop hard enough that it echoed. I sat in the dark office for over an hour, staring at nothing. The silence pressed against my ears. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, gritting my teeth so tightly my jaw ached. Around 2 a.m., I wandered back to the bedroom. Elena was asleep, one arm draped over the pillow like a question mark. I stood there, watching her chest rise and fall. My wife. My liar. I had options. Confrontation. Divorce. Drama. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wanted answers first. Not just about the affair. I wanted the whole story. The timeline. The lies. The why. So I waited. Over the next week, I became someone else. Someone quieter. More patient. I answered her questions without asking my own. I listened without reacting. I kissed her forehead when she left for work and watched the car tracker light up as she pulled out of the driveway. I followed her routine. Mondays and Thursdays, work, then home by 6. Wednesdays, late meetings, But her tracker always stopped for about 2 hours at a mid-range hotel near the downtown loop. Never overnight. Just enough time to arrive, disappear, and leave with her hair slightly mussed and her lipstick reapplied. Fridays, back by 5, because Fridays are for family. I began a spreadsheet. Names, dates, locations. I documented everything. The frequency of visits. The timestamps of her texts to me versus when she was with him. There was a pattern, and she had followed it religiously for at least 2 months. And then I found the old texts, buried in the cloud archive. Probably forgotten. Years back. 2.5, to be exact. Thanks for today, she'd written. Still can't believe we got away with it. I'd do it again tomorrow, Mark J. replied. You're the highlight of my week. 2.5 years. That was the part that broke something inside me. This wasn't a sudden thing. It wasn't about losing spark or having a rough patch. It wasn't a mistake. It was a second life she'd been living. A life I wasn't part of. I began watching her more closely in person. Not just where she went, how she behaved. The subtle ways she changed before her meetings. The extra spritz of perfume. The way she triple-checked her appearance in the mirror, tugging at her blouse with just a little more care. And then there was the ring. Always on her right hand. Always shining like a scar. One night, I asked again. That ring, I said over dinner. What made you decide to wear it again? Her eyes flicked to mine. For a second, I saw hesitation. Then a smile. I already told you. You gave it to me. Thought I'd wear it more often. She was better at lying now. Practiced. Casual. I nodded. Funny. I don't remember buying it. She sipped her wine. You forgot our 5th anniversary too, remember? We both smiled. I hated her for how convincing it looked. That night, while she slept, I retrieved the voice recorder from her car and scrubbed through the files. I found a dozen recordings. Most were mundane. Music, traffic, occasional phone calls. But one, from 3 days ago, was different. Her voice, soft and intimate. I think he suspects something. His voice, gruffer. Then it's time. End it. I can't just drop everything. He'll ask questions. He's not stupid. You said he's passive. He won't do anything. Passive doesn't mean blind. They laughed, low and conspiratorial. My breath caught. I saved the file. Played it again. He won't do anything. They had no idea who I was becoming. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I spent hours drafting an anonymous email. It was carefully composed, detailed, but vague enough not to be traced. I included screenshots from their messages, blurred their faces in the photos, just enough to protect myself. Then I sent it to Mark J.'s company HR department. A risk, but worth it. By noon, I got confirmation the email had been opened. By 3 o'clock, I saw Elena's tracker light up at a location that wasn't the hotel. It was his office. By 4:15, she was home. When I walked through the door, she was in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall. I could smell her perfume, the one she always wore for him. She didn't speak right away, just stood there, arms crossed. He thinks someone reported us, she said finally. I set down my keys. Who? Mark. His boss confronted him today. HR's involved. I raised an eyebrow. That's serious. Yeah, she whispered. He might lose his job. I said nothing, just walked to the fridge and poured a glass of water. She turned to me, face pale. I don't know what's going to happen. Sounds complicated, I said, sipping slowly. For the first time, she looked nervous. Afraid. And I wasn't finished. That night, I moved the camera in our bedroom slightly, just enough to capture her face more clearly. I cleaned out the files, replaced the memory card, and began logging the footage daily. She was withdrawing now. Less talkative. Fewer late-night meetings. I could see the panic building in her posture. She thought she was being watched. She was right. The following weekend, I took the kids to visit my sister, just the 3 of us. Told Elena I needed a mental break, some time with family. She nodded, relieved. While we were gone, I left a small USB stick in her nightstand. It contained every text, every call, every photo I had archived. No note, just the drive. On Sunday night, when we came home, it was gone. She didn't mention it. I didn't bring it up. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine anymore. And the ring? It was gone too. She wasn't wearing it Monday morning. But the damage was already done. I watched her hands for days after the ring disappeared. There was a faint, pale indentation where it had sat, like a ghost of a lie, imprinted into her skin. Even as it faded, I kept glancing at her fingers, waiting to see if it would return. It never did. She'd buried it, or thrown it away, or hidden it somewhere I hadn't yet looked. But she never wore it again. Not after the USB stick. Her demeanor shifted, too. She became quieter, more attentive. Like she was trying to step back into the role of the woman she used to be. The wife I remembered before I started cataloging her betrayals. She'd bring me coffee in the mornings, the way she used to when we were first married. She'd ask about my day and actually listen. She kissed me goodnight and reached for my hand in the dark. But it all felt staged, like a play running out of rehearsals. I played along, smiled when she smiled, answered questions with questions. I became a mirror, reflecting only what she wanted to see. Beneath it, though, something darker took root. She hadn't confessed. Not once. Not a word about the man I knew she'd loved. The affair I'd proven. The ring that had never belonged to me. She didn't apologize, didn't beg, didn't ask for forgiveness. She tried to overwrite it. Like if she pretended hard enough, the past might blink out of existence. But I remembered everything. And I wasn't done. One evening, after dinner, I went for a walk. I left my phone behind, just in case she was tracking me the way I had once tracked her. I needed space to think. I wandered down the familiar sidewalks of our neighborhood, past the hedges I trimmed every fall, the park where our son had taken his first steps. I stopped near the corner bakery, long closed for the night, and stared at my reflection in the darkened glass. I looked tired. Not older, exactly, just hollowed out in places no one could see. I thought about Mark J. He'd disappeared from her life. That much I was sure of. He hadn't contacted her again, not through her phone, not through email. I'd checked. Maybe HR had done more than just slap him on the wrist. Maybe he'd been fired. Maybe he moved. Maybe he got scared. Good. But it wasn't enough. This man had taken something from me. Not just my wife's loyalty, but my reality. For years, I had been the other man in my own marriage. I had been a placeholder, while someone else lived inside her heart. And I wanted him to feel it. I wanted to burn it into him. The next morning, I requested a personal day from work. I told Elena I had errands. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and went back to folding laundry like we were in a detergent commercial. I drove to his office building downtown. His LinkedIn profile was still live. I had his face memorized, burned into my vision from the photos she never meant me to see. It was easy to figure out where he worked, what floor he was on, even what time he usually arrived. I parked across the street with a coffee in one hand and a small, black envelope in the other. When he walked up, alone, suit pressed, expression tight, I crossed the street and approached him. Mark. He turned, confused. Yes. I handed him the envelope. He hesitated. Who are? I'm her husband. Just those words. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to deny it. But I was already walking away. Inside the envelope were copies of every photo he'd taken with Elena. Every text. Every hotel receipt. A screenshot of the anonymous email to HR. And a note, handwritten, simple. I see you now. That was it. I never saw him again. No one came to our house. No letters. No calls. But something shifted after that day. Elena grew tense again, like she felt the walls closing in. The silence between us changed shape, no longer cold, but electric. Like a current ran beneath our conversations. She'd linger in rooms longer. Watch me more carefully. Ask too many questions about where I'd been, who I saw. She knew something was coming. But she didn't know what. 1 week later, I received the call I'd been waiting for. The private investigator I'd hired, before the ring, before the photos, before the USB, back when all I had was a suspicion and a name. He'd finally tracked down what I asked for. Mark J. wasn't just an affair. He wasn't some random colleague or a passing flame. He was her ex-fiancé. From before me. From before us. The engagement had ended abruptly 12 years ago. Family disapproval. Distance. Timing. I remembered Elena vaguely mentioning it once, back when we were still getting to know each other. She had laughed, said something like, young and stupid, and brushed it off. But now I saw the full arc. He'd been her first choice. The one she might have married if things had been different. And now, apparently, they had been different. Different enough for her to find him again. To wear his ring again. To carry him back into her life. Back into our home. Back into my marriage. It wasn't just infidelity. It was history repeating. And I was the rewrite. I hung up the call and sat on our front porch in the late afternoon light. The trees whispered above me. Children played somewhere down the street. Everything looked peaceful. But inside me, a war raged. It had never been about sex. It wasn't even about the lies anymore. It was about replacement. I had been Plan B. I thought of the ring again. How naturally it had sat on her finger. How easily she'd claimed it came from me. I had been wearing someone else's suit all these years, thinking it had been tailored for me. That night, I began clearing out the attic. Box by box. Elena asked what I was doing, and I told her calmly, making space. For what? She asked, frowning. For truth, I said. She didn't understand. But she would. The next day, I called our lawyer. Set a meeting. Requested the paperwork. No confrontation. No screaming match. No dramatic ultimatum. Just facts. We had no prenup. But I had evidence. A mountain of it. Enough to negotiate favorable terms. Enough to destroy any pretense she might use to cast herself as the victim. I made copies of everything, digital and physical. Stored them in places she'd never find. And then I waited. On a quiet Sunday evening, while the kids were at a sleepover and the air smelled faintly of rain, I poured her a glass of wine. She sat across from me, expression uncertain. Elena, I said. Yes? I know everything. She blinked. I didn't flinch. The ring. The affair. The messages. The man you used to love. She went still, like a statue. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said after a long silence. I nodded slowly. But it did. I thought I could make it right. I thought you'd never find out. That's what hurts the most, I said. That you thought I'd never notice. She set her glass down. Her hands trembled. What are you going to do? I leaned forward. I'm going to take back everything you stole. And just like that, the mask fell from her face. No more pretending. No more rewrites. Just us, stripped bare, in the ruins of our truth. She didn't speak for a long time after I told her. It was a quiet unlike any I'd ever experienced in our home. Not the sleepy silence of a lazy Sunday. Not the exhausted hush that follows a long argument. This was something colder. Denser. Like the air itself was waiting. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, eyes rimmed with tears that didn't fall. I saw her brain reaching for some narrative, some version of herself that still had control of this moment. But there was none. I had taken that from her. You went through my things, she said finally. Her voice was soft, almost surprised. I didn't answer. You tracked me. Still, I said nothing. Her gaze narrowed. You recorded me? I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands. I documented you. A pause. She drew a shallow breath, hands clenched at her sides. I could see her swallowing 1,000 reactions. Denial. Anger. Justification. She chose none of them. I should have told you, she whispered. I nodded. Yes, you should have. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. She looked down at her lap. The wine sat untouched between us. The room filled with nothing but the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of wood settling in the walls. When did you know? She asked after a moment. I didn't lie. The ring. That one sentence was enough. She closed her eyes. A single tear escaped, tracked down her cheek, and vanished into her collarbone. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, she said. But it did. She nodded. It was his, wasn't it? I asked, though I already knew. She nodded again. Elena, did you love him? She didn't answer. And there it was. Not even a lie, just silence. As though denying it out loud would be worse than admitting the truth. That told me everything I needed. I stood up. She looked at me, alarm flashing in her eyes. Where are you going? To sleep, I said. You should do the same. Tomorrow, we talk about how we end this. End this, she repeated. I turned in the doorway, my voice low and steady. There's no coming back from what you did. You wore his ring in my house. You told me I gave it to you. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. You made me invisible, I said. Now you can watch me disappear. Upstairs, I lay in the guest bedroom. Slept like a stone. The next morning, she didn't come downstairs. I took the kids to school. Played the part. Smiled when I had to. I kept my voice warm, steady. I didn't want them to feel anything yet. Not until I was ready to explain it properly. Not until I knew the shape this ending would take. Later that afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Mitchell Green, a sharp, unshakable man who had handled my firm's business contracts for years. She cheated, I told him plainly. I want to proceed quietly, but decisively. He nodded, no surprise on his face. You have evidence? I slid a flash drive across the desk. More than you'll ever need. He raised an eyebrow. You're sure you want to use this? You could negotiate a clean split without dragging her through mud. I met his eyes. Oh, I plan to keep it clean. But if she decides to fight, I want her to know exactly what's at stake. He tapped the flash drive, then tucked it into a drawer. Understood. When I came home that evening, she was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a cardigan, legs pulled up beneath her. I made dinner, she said quietly. I nodded. Thanks. We ate in near silence. The kids talked about school, argued over who would sit where, passed each other napkins and forks. The rhythm of normalcy played out like a scene from a movie I no longer belonged in. After they were asleep, we sat down at the kitchen table again. She folded her hands. You want a divorce? I nodded. Can we talk about terms? I slid a folder across the table. This is what I'm offering. She opened it. Her eyebrows raised slightly. You're being generous, she said. Too generous. I'm not here to punish you. I just want out. She closed the folder. Why haven't you told the kids? Because they deserve better than the ugliness of this. I'll explain it on my terms. Together? I shook my head. No. She flinched. Elena, I can't do this with you anymore. I don't hate you, but I don't recognize you either. She nodded slowly. What about the house? You can stay until the papers are signed. After that, we'll sell it or divide assets based on what Mitchell arranges. And the photos? She asked. I looked at her hard. If you cooperate, they stay buried. If you don't, they come out. She stared at me. Do you think I'm a bad person? I let the silence stretch. I think you became someone I couldn't trust, I said finally. And I don't know how long you've been that person. She wiped her cheek. I never meant to. I held up a hand. Let's not rewrite it. You wore his ring, Elena, and you looked me in the eyes and said it was from me. Her shoulders shook, just once. I stood up and walked upstairs. In the days that followed, we lived like shadows around each other. I moved into the guest room permanently. We took turns with the kids, spoke only when necessary. But something strange started happening. She began unraveling. Subtly at first. Her posture drooped. Her voice lost its sharpness. She missed a school pickup, then forgot to send lunch with our daughter. One night, I found her sitting in the laundry room, lights off, just staring at the floor. Are you okay? I asked, not unkindly. She nodded. Just tired. But it wasn't just that. Something was fraying inside her. And then I found the letter, slipped under my bedroom door one evening, folded in thirds, handwritten in her neat script. Inside, she laid it all out. She confessed to the affair. She explained how it began, how running into Mark again at a conference had reopened a door she thought was closed. How curiosity became conversation, conversation became connection. She spoke about feeling invisible in our marriage, unloved, underappreciated, all the classic lines. But she admitted, too, that those were excuses, that the ring wasn't just a keepsake, it was a symbol, a second chance at something she thought she had lost. She said it felt like destiny, and she realized, too late, that it was just desperation. She ended the letter with 6 words. I never stopped loving you. Still, but I didn't feel anything when I read it. No flicker of hope. No sadness. Just silence. Whatever she thought still lived between us had long since died. The next morning, I handed the letter back. No more notes, I said. We're past that. She nodded. But that afternoon, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Mitchell. Problem? I asked. Elena's lawyer reached out. She's agreed to everything. No contest. I frowned. That was fast. She's not asking for the house. Or custody. Just her car and half of what's in the joint account. I was quiet for a long time. Then, fine. Let her have it. She could have asked for more, Mitchell said. Then let that be her last kindness, I replied. I hung up and stared out the window. The rain had returned, soft and steady. It tapped against the glass like a metronome counting down. The final stage had begun. But I didn't yet know that she wasn't done. She wasn't done. The paperwork had been filed. The division of assets agreed upon. Lawyers were coordinating signatures and dates. And still, something in her lingered, an urgency just under the surface. Like she'd forgotten to say something that couldn't wait. She moved around the house like a woman haunted. I caught her once staring at our wedding photo above the stairs, eyes glassy, her hand unconsciously touching the spot where the ring had once sat. Not the sapphire, the real ring. The one I gave her. The one she hadn't worn since the night I told her I knew. By the end of that week, we were living like ghosts inside a shell of what once was a marriage. Then came the envelope. It was a Friday morning when I found it, slipped into the mail slot by hand. No stamp, no return address. The handwriting was hers. I opened it in the hallway, the soft sounds of cartoons echoing from the living room where the kids were still in pajamas. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, cream-colored, folded in half. There was no greeting. Only 3 sentences. Before you walk away for good, I need you to see something. It's not forgiveness I want, just truth. Below the note was an address and a time. Sunday, 3 p.m. I stared at it for a long while. Not angry, not curious, just tired. I didn't know her anything. But some part of me, maybe the same part that still looked at her across the dinner table and remembered the woman I'd once loved, decided to go. Sunday came quietly. I dropped the kids off at my sister's, told her Elena needed time alone. She didn't ask questions. She'd known something was broken for a while. The address was across town, near the edge of a district I'd barely visited. Industrial buildings and converted lofts. The kind of place that looked abandoned but secretly buzzed with life behind rusted doors. I parked along the curb, walked up to the building. No signs, just a keypad. The door clicked open when I approached. She was waiting inside. The space was strange, an empty gallery, wide white walls, bare floors. But along one side, carefully mounted, were framed photographs. Dozens of them. I recognized them instantly. Us. Me. From the earliest days. Before marriage. Before kids. Trips we took. Hikes. Laughing in front of a campfire. Me holding a grocery bag in a parking lot. Her snapping a selfie of us in bed on a rainy morning. She stood beside the final image, a black and white photograph of me sitting at the piano in our living room, back turned to the lens. I'd forgotten she even took it. I stared at the collection. She watched me. This is what I kept, she said quietly. I said nothing. I didn't keep photos of him. I didn't frame any of that. But I kept these. All of them. I printed them last year. I don't even know why. I looked around the gallery again. It wasn't big. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. You don't have to forgive me, she said. I won't, I replied. She nodded, as if she'd been expecting it. I just wanted you to know that even when I was gone, I never really left this. Didn't stop you, I said. Didn't stop the lies. The hiding. The ring. No, she whispered. It didn't. We stood in silence. Just the hum of a vent overhead and the quiet weight of everything between us. I ruined us, she said finally. Yes. I wish I could take it back. I know. She wiped her eyes, turned her face away. And then I said the one thing I hadn't said yet. I loved you. She looked up. Still. No, I said. But I did. I really did. She took a step forward, then stopped. I know this doesn't fix anything, she said. No, I agreed. But thank you. For a moment, we just stood there. Not lovers. Not husband and wife. Just 2 people staring at a gallery of memories that used to mean something. I turned to leave. She didn't follow. Outside, the sky was beginning to bruise with the onset of fall. Clouds rolling in, wind tugging at my collar. And for the first time in months, I felt clear. Not healed, but clear. The divorce finalized within the month. She kept her word. No disputes, no drawn-out legal games. The house was sold, the funds split. She took an apartment near the kids' school. I found a smaller place of my own, a quiet rental with good light and bad flooring. We co-parented with civility, coordination. There were days we didn't speak at all, and days we exchanged texts about science projects or dentist appointments. We kept it simple. I took up piano again, something I hadn't touched in years. Not for anyone else, just for myself. The keys felt different under my hands now, like they belonged to someone I used to be. I never saw the ring again. Not the sapphire. Not even the one I gave her. Sometimes I wondered what she did with them. Pawned. Boxed away. Thrown into a river. It didn't matter. Symbols lose power once the truth is known. And then, one evening, maybe 5 months later, I came home from work and found an envelope tucked inside my mailbox. No return name. But I knew the handwriting. Inside was a photo. A single one. It was me, holding our daughter's hand on a walk, snapped candidly from behind. The late autumn light was golden. Our shadows long and soft. No note. No message. Just the image. I didn't frame it. I didn't burn it either. I slid it into a drawer. A memory, and nothing more. The gallery had closed by then. I heard from a friend she'd taken the photographs down, returned to work, moved on. So did I? Eventually, I stopped checking her social media. Stopped wondering if she was seeing someone new. If she was happy. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to know. One afternoon, while helping our son with his homework, he asked casually, "Dad, why don't you live with Mom anymore?" I looked at him, then looked at his math worksheet, filled with numbers and confusion. "We stopped being good together," I said. "And we thought it'd be better if we were both honest about that." He nodded like it made sense, then asked if he could have a snack. And that was it. Children don't carry the weight of betrayal the way adults do. They ask, they adjust, they move forward. And I tried to do the same. In time, I went on dates again. Nothing serious. I was slower now, more guarded, but also more deliberate. I no longer looked for someone to complete a picture. I just looked for someone to stand beside me while I painted a new one. Years passed. The photo in the drawer yellowed slightly at the edges. And sometimes, when the house was quiet and the sky turned the color of old film, I'd open that drawer. I'd glance at that moment, a stolen frame of something pure, something before, and I'd feel nothing. Not anger, not longing, just peace. The ring she wore had never been mine. But the truth? That always belonged to me.